It only took 22 seconds. 22 seconds inside a quiet Lloyds Bank in Derby city centre to change everything. A father of 3, a man who built everything from nothing, gone. In broad daylight. For no reason at all. At exactly 2:30 p.m. on May 6th, 2 men, strangers, crossed paths inside that branch. Their meeting lasted less than half a minute. But what happened next would be described by the judge as a real-life horror film. Inside Lloyds Bank that afternoon, everything looked ordinary. Customers queued quietly, phones in hand, money being withdrawn. Among them was 37-year-old Gurvinder Johal, Danny to everyone who knew him. A husband, a father, a son, and the face of one of Derby's most loved restaurants, Hen and Chicken's Bar and Grill. He wasn't there for himself. He was there to withdraw cash, to pay his staff. Because that's who Danny was. Responsible, reliable, always thinking of others before himself. He was on FaceTime with a friend, chatting casually, unaware that she was about to witness the last seconds of his life live through her phone screen. Moments later, another man walked into the same bank. His name was Haybe Cabdiraxmaan Nur, 31 years old. A failed asylum seeker from Somalia. He looked disoriented. His movements were heavy. He'd been drinking, not just a little. 3 full bottles of vodka before stepping through that door. His asylum claim had been rejected just hours earlier. His appeal was pending. He was angry, at the government, at the world, at himself. He'd already made threats that morning. To a migrant charity, he'd said, "I'm going to kill 500 people." He talked about targeting doctors, police, anyone from the Home Office. No one did anything. No one stopped him. And now, he was inside Lloyds Bank, his eyes bloodshot, his mind burning. CCTV caught it all. Nur walks in. He scans the room. He doesn't know Danny Johal. He's never seen him before. But in that split second, he makes a decision. He reaches into his pocket. A flash of silver. A knife. Without a word, he lunges forward and drives it straight into Danny's chest. Just once. One fatal strike. A random act of evil so fast, so senseless, the entire queue freezes in disbelief. Danny stumbles backward, drops his phone. His friend on FaceTime screams through the speaker, she's watching the attack unfold live. Then Danny collapses to the floor. 22 seconds. That's all it took. By the time emergency services arrived, it was too late. He died where he fell, in the middle of a bank, surrounded by strangers who would never forget what they saw. Danny wasn't a politician or a celebrity. He was the heartbeat of a hard-working immigrant family. A father of 3, a 6-year-old boy, a 3-year-old girl, and a 1-year-old baby. A devoted husband. A businessman who built something out of nothing. He and his father, Sukhdev Singh, ran 3 restaurants in Derby, West Bromwich, and Birmingham. Each one a local success story. Each one born from sweat, hard work, and long nights. Danny was known for his charm, his warmth, his work ethic. At the Hen and Chickens, staff said he treated them like family. He was the type who'd roll up his sleeves and wash dishes if he had to. Never above anyone. Always grateful. He'd invested £1.5 million of his own money into the restaurant, and it was thriving. He had dreams, plans. But all of that ended in seconds. Haybe Cabdiraxmaan Nur's story couldn't be more different. He was born in Somalia, a country ravaged by war. He'd lost his fiancée, executed by her own relatives because she was from a rival tribe. He fled the country, traveling through Italy, France, Germany, Luxembourg, Holland. In each country, he left behind a record. Assault, robbery, shoplifting, drunkenness, abusive behavior. And yet, he kept moving, crossing borders, slipping through systems that never stopped him. He arrived in the UK by small boat in October, applied for asylum, got taxpayer-funded housing, registered with a GP. But he didn't change. Neighbors said he was drunk every day. Aggressive. Loud. Violent. He was once heard shouting F*** the English, and white racist bastards, before headbutting a construction worker. Police arrested him, then released him. Time after time, the system gave him another chance. That morning, Nur woke up in his government-funded flat. He was angry. His asylum rejection letter sat on the table. He downed vodka, called a charity, said he wanted to kill, and then he went out. Aimless. Wandering. He didn't have a target. He didn't even know who he'd hurt. But inside Lloyds Bank, his rage found the nearest face. That face happened to be Gurvinder Johal. News spread quickly. Social media exploded. People couldn't understand. Why Danny? He wasn't involved in crime. He wasn't at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was just there. 4 days, flowers piled outside the hen and chickens. Notes. Candles. Photos. The city mourned. A community shattered. A family broken. Danny's father, Sukhdev, sat in silence. He'd built everything alongside his son. Now, the restaurant stood half empty. The laughter is gone. He told reporters, "I blame the government. They should have kicked him out." He was a migrant with a criminal record. He wasn't speaking out of hate, but heartbreak. He'd come to this country in the 1970s, an immigrant himself. Worked in pubs, saved every penny, built a business, raised a family. He believed in Britain, the idea that hard work brings respect. But now, he wasn't sure anymore. In Derby Crown Court, the footage was played. Every second of that horrific attack. The room was silent. Even the officers who'd seen hundreds of cases before turned away. Nur stood there, emotionless. No tears. No regret. He admitted to killing Danny Johal, but claimed he didn't remember doing it. The judge called it what it was, a real-life horror film. He sentenced Nur to life imprisonment, with a minimum of 25 years. 25 years. For a crime that took 22 seconds. The case triggered outrage across Britain. How could someone with that criminal record, denied asylum, still be living freely on UK streets? Danny's father demanded answers. So did the public. So did Parliament. Each new detail made it worse. Nur's asylum claim had already failed. He had convictions across Europe. He'd been making violent threats just hours before the attack. And still, no one acted. His father said, "If the Prime Minister had done his job properly, my son would still be here today." His grief became political, not out of anger, but out of desperation. He wasn't just mourning his son. He was mourning the system that let his killer walk among them. Danny and Nur, two men whose lives told opposite stories. Danny represented everything people hope immigration can be. A man who came from humble beginnings and gave back. Nur represented the system's failure. Someone who slipped through every safety net, leaving chaos wherever he went. In those 22 seconds, their stories collided. And Britain saw both faces of immigration in one tragic image. Back at home, Danny's wife sits in silence most nights. His children, too young to understand, still ask, "When is Daddy coming back?" There's no answer for that. Only a void where their father used to be. Danny's sister, Sandeep, wrote in her victim statement, "The deepest wound is the impact on his children. Their innocence has been stolen. They are withdrawn, fearful, confused." Her words cut through the courtroom like glass. Sukhdev still runs the restaurants. But he doesn't smile like he used to. The lights stay dimmer. The laughter is quieter. He told a reporter, "We came to this country with nothing, and we worked hard. We didn't expect to live off the state. We wanted to contribute. And we did. But now, I don't think there's a future here anymore." He looks at the chair where Danny used to sit during family dinners. It's empty. It will always be. The murder became more than just a crime story. It became a symbol for all the debates tearing Britain apart. Border control, immigration, human rights, responsibility. Politicians blamed one another. The public demanded answers. But for one family, none of it mattered anymore, because nothing could bring Danny back. As journalists began digging deeper into Nur's background, they discovered something disturbing. He wasn't supposed to be in Derby at all. He'd been transferred from another asylum accommodation after multiple violent incidents. Records showed authorities knew he was dangerous, but still moved him. Even more shocking was what detectives found in his phone after his arrest. Messages sent just hours before the killing. Threats, mentions of specific targets, and a chilling voice note where he spoke in Somali about wanting to make them pay. But who exactly did he mean by them? The government, the British, or something far more personal? Police are still piecing together those final hours, because something about Nur's movements that day doesn't add up. 22 seconds changed a family forever. A husband, a father, a son, gone. But behind that random act of violence was a trail of warnings, missed opportunities, and a secret that might change everything we thought we knew about that day. After the murder, the headlines called it a senseless, random attack. But the more detectives dug, the less random it seemed. Because what they found on the killer's phone, and in the weeks before the murder, hinted at something much darker. Something that shouldn't have been possible. Not with the warnings, not with the files, not with the red flags. When officers seized Haybe Cabdiraxmaan Nur's phone from his pocket, it was smeared with blood, still unlocked. Inside, they found dozens of messages. Some to migrant charities. Some to people back in Somalia. And one, sent just 2 hours before the murder, that stopped investigators cold. It read, in broken English, "They made me wait too long. I will make them feel what I feel." Attached was a voice note, Nur's voice, low and angry, speaking in Somali. A translator later confirmed what he said. "I will show them. They think I am nothing. They will see." The they he spoke of? No one knew for sure. But investigators suspected he wasn't talking about random strangers. The morning of May 6th started like every other. CCTV from his asylum accommodation showed Nur pacing outside his building around 9 a.m. He was drinking from a bottle of vodka, shouting, throwing glass. A neighbor later told police he heard him yelling, "They will pay," over and over again. At 11:47 a.m., Nur made a phone call to a migration advice charity. The call lasted 8 minutes. He told the volunteer, "I want to kill people." Then named 3 possible locations: a hospital, a police station, and a bank. The volunteer wrote a note, filed it in the charity's internal log. No one escalated it. 2 hours later, he walked into Lloyds Bank. When the details emerged, detectives couldn't believe it. Nur had made multiple threats, to social workers, to accommodation staff, to police, yet no agency had acted. Each department thought the other one was responsible. Each one missed the danger growing in plain sight. And now, a man is dead. An internal Home Office memo later revealed something shocking. Nur had been placed on a watch list for potential deportation due to his criminal history. But deportations were delayed. There was no detention space. So he stayed free. A bureaucratic delay that cost a man his life. When Gurvinder's father, Sukhdev Singh, learned about these failures, he broke down in tears. He said, "They knew he was dangerous. They knew. And they still let him walk the streets. He wasn't wrong." Reports later confirmed Nur had attacked another migrant only weeks earlier. He'd been arrested, then released. Each time, the system looked the other way. Each time, the consequences grew worse. And this time, the cost was irreversible. Detectives at Derbyshire Police pieced together the timeline minute by minute. They noticed something strange. Before entering the bank, Nur had stopped by a phone shop 2 streets away. CCTV captured him standing at the counter, staring at his phone screen. He wasn't buying anything, just staring. Then suddenly, he smiled and left. When police later pulled the device data, they discovered a chilling clue. He had just listened to a voice message. It came from an unknown international number, encrypted, and in Somali. It lasted 6 seconds. No one could identify the sender, but audio analysis suggested it came from outside the UK, possibly Italy. The message simply said, "Do what you came to do." The idea that the killing might not have been random changed everything. Could Nur have been acting on orders? Was he pushed, manipulated, or part of something bigger? Detectives couldn't find any evidence of organized coordination. No political motive. No extremist group connection. But what they did find was a growing number of asylum seekers using encrypted channels to vent rage, and in some cases, to be radicalized by online communities feeding resentment and anger. Nur had been part of one of those groups. The chat logs, later leaked, showed violent fantasies, discussions about revenge, and about teaching the English how it feels. No direct link to terror networks, but plenty of hate. And maybe that was enough. During Nur's trial, none of this was mentioned publicly. Prosecutors stuck to the facts. They didn't want speculation about ideology to cloud the case. But behind closed doors, investigators were asking new questions. Was this more than a crime of madness? Was it the product of a system breeding resentment and failure? Because if it was, then the horror in Lloyds Bank was only a symptom of something deeper. Meanwhile, Danny's family kept the restaurants open, because that's what he would have wanted. His wife took over some operations, even with 3 children at home. Customers flooded in with support. Donations poured in from across the UK. They renamed one of the restaurant's private dining rooms, Danny's Corner. A quiet place with his photos, candles, and flowers. But for his father, the success was hollow. Each time he passed the till, he thought of his son standing in line that day, just trying to pay his staff. He said, he wasn't out looking for trouble. He was looking after people. And he died for it. The murder ignited debate in Parliament. Home Office officials were grilled. Why was Nur not deported? Why were warnings ignored? Why did it take a tragedy to expose the cracks everyone already knew existed? No one had clear answers. The Prime Minister expressed deep regret. But regret couldn't fix a broken system, or heal a broken family. Immigration officials privately admitted that deporting offenders with asylum claims was nearly impossible without violating international law. So they waited. And while they waited, people like Nur slipped through. Weeks after the sentencing, an independent journalist obtained leaked documents from the Home Office. Inside them, a file marked "Confidential, Case of H.C. Nur." It revealed Nur had been on antipsychotic medication in Italy and Germany. He had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was supposed to be under supervision in the UK. But his treatment had lapsed when he moved to accommodation. No one followed up. No one checked his mental health status. By the time of the killing, he hadn't taken medication for 6 months. That meant this wasn't just about immigration. It was about neglect. Neglect that stretched across borders. One document referenced an email chain between Derby Social Services, a local GP, and the Home Office. It contained a line that stood out. The subject exhibits violent ideation and should be placed under monitoring. That email was sent 3 days before the murder. No one replied. When this came to light, the outrage reignited. The question wasn't, why did he do it? It was, why was he still free? In every true crime, there's a moment when the system could have stopped it. This one had dozens. But bureaucracy moves slower than violence. And by the time the paperwork caught up, the damage was irreversible. Danny Johal became another name on a list, a symbol of what happens when warnings go ignored. His father still says, if someone had done their job, my son would be alive. And he's right. Every delay, Every excuse, every "it's not my department," led to that 22-second encounter in Lloyds Bank. Months after Nur's sentencing, Derbyshire police quietly reopened part of the case, not to retry him, but to trace that mysterious voice message. The encrypted number pinged from multiple countries: Italy, Belgium, France. All places Nur had lived or been detained. Interpol became involved. And that's when a new lead surfaced. A man who'd shared an address with Nur in Italy had disappeared weeks before the murder. The same man's fingerprints appeared on one of the phones found in Nur's flat in Derby. Coincidence? Maybe. But investigators weren't so sure. They began to suspect that Nur might have been influenced, even manipulated, by someone abroad who knew his mental instability. Someone who wanted chaos. So now, years later, we're left with more questions than answers. Was Danny's murder truly random? Or was it the result of unseen hands, negligence, bureaucracy, or even darker motives? Did Nur act alone? Or was he a pawn in something bigger? The police files remain sealed. The Home Office refuses to comment. And the truth, the real truth, may never be fully known. For Danny's family, none of that changes the reality. A man who gave everything to his community, gone in seconds. A father's dream shattered. A system's failure exposed. His story is no longer just about a murder. It's about what happens when compassion turns to carelessness, and when the lines between right and wrong blur beneath red tape. As his father said, "We worked hard for this country, and this country failed us." But in late 2025, an anonymous whistleblower from inside the Home Office came forward. He claimed to have seen files that prove Nur's case wasn't isolated, that dozens of high-risk asylum claimants had vanished after rejection, and at least one of them was living in Derby, under a new name. Detectives are still investigating. But if the whistleblower is right, then what happened to Danny Johal may only have been the beginning. 22 seconds inside a bank. One knife. One man's life was erased. And behind it all, a chain of failures, secrets, and warnings buried too deep to fix. But somewhere out there, someone knows the truth about why it really happened. And when that truth finally comes out, it could shake everything we think we know about justice, and about who's really safe. Some stories end in a courtroom. This one didn't. Because of the Johal family, justice wasn't just about a sentence. It was about the truth that no one wanted to tell them. Months after the cameras left, after the flowers outside the restaurant had wilted, after the city moved on, one man's voice brought the pain back, louder than ever. He said, "Danny's death wasn't random. It was preventable, and the government knows it." That voice belonged to a whistleblower, and what he revealed would shake the Johal family to their core. It began with an email, sent at 2:14 a.m., from an anonymous address. Subject line, "You deserve to know the truth." At first, the family thought it was spam. But inside the message were 3 words that froze them in place. Nur wasn't alone. Attached, a PDF. Dozens of pages. Official headers. Home Office logos. Documents stamped, restricted. The sender didn't sign a name. Only a single line at the bottom. They're still hiding it. The pages detailed internal reports, emails, risk assessments, and deportation memos. One section was titled, Incident Alerts, HC Nur. It listed multiple warnings, including a psychological evaluation recommending urgent supervision. Another page contained a handwritten note, scrawled in blue ink. HC Nur, volatile. Keep under watch until transfer is confirmed. Transfer. To where? No location was listed, but a date was May 7th, the day after the murder. The implication was horrifying. If Nur hadn't killed Danny, he might have been removed quietly the next morning. When Danny's father, Sukhdev, read the documents, his hands trembled. He said, they were going to move him. They knew he was dangerous. They just waited too long. For the first time, the grief turned to fury. The family decided to act. They hired lawyers, contacted journalists, and within weeks, the headlines returned, but this time, not about the murder, about the cover-up. But the government didn't respond. The Home Office issued a single statement: "We do not comment on leaked materials." Behind closed doors, officials began denying the documents' authenticity. They said the files were fabricated, that no transfer order ever existed. But the Johal family had proof. Embedded metadata in the PDF confirmed it had originated from a government email server. Someone inside had sent it. Someone who wanted the truth out. Weeks later, an encrypted call reached a local reporter. A man's voice, distorted, nervous. He said he worked in the Home Office. He'd seen the file. He couldn't stay silent. They were warned. The staff knew Nur was unstable. But the order came from above. Not to detain, not to escalate, not to risk headlines. When the reporter asked why, the man paused, then said, "Because detaining asylum seekers makes the numbers look bad. And numbers matter more than lives." Then the line went dead. The revelation tore open old wounds. Danny's wife, still caring for 3 children, couldn't escape the thought that maybe, just maybe, her husband's death was the result of paperwork. Her nights were sleepless. Her youngest still cried out for his father. The eldest, only 6, stopped smiling altogether. In one heartbreaking moment, she told a reporter, "He thinks his dad's at work. He waits at the window every evening." Her words went viral. And suddenly, what had been a local story became national again. Under growing public pressure, Parliament reopened discussions about the case. MPs debated immigration failures. One MP read the whistleblower's claims aloud in session, despite warnings from colleagues. He said, "If the leaked files are genuine, they expose catastrophic negligence inside the Home Office. And the Johal family deserves the truth." The room fell silent. Then chaos erupted. Denials, accusations, cameras flashing, but still, no answers. That night, Sukhdev made a decision. If the system wouldn't give him justice, he'd make it. He began compiling every document, every statement, every unanswered email. He spent nights in his restaurant office surrounded by boxes of paper and grief. He told a friend, "I built my life from nothing once. I can build justice from nothing too." Soon, he became the face of a movement, calling for accountability, reform, and truth. But what he didn't know was that the whistleblower was still watching. And he wasn't done talking. 2 months later, another message arrived. This time, not by email, but through a brown envelope, hand-delivered to the restaurant. No return address. No signature. Inside, a USB drive. On it were audio files. Recordings from internal Home Office meetings. Voices discussing Nur's case, days before the killing. One official could be heard saying, "He's unpredictable. But we can't afford another scandal right now. Keep him off the radar until the press cycle dies down." Another voice replied, "If we detain him, NGOs will scream human rights violations." Then silence. A sigh. And the words that broke Sukhdev's heart. "He's Derby's problem now." The family turned the recordings over to the press. The following Sunday, the headline exploded across front pages. Exclusive: Home Office warned about Derby killer days before murder. The government called it unauthorized manipulation. But forensic experts confirmed the audio was real. The country erupted. For the first time, it wasn't just about immigration. It was about accountability. Public outrage forced the government to launch an independent inquiry. The Johal family attended every session. They sat silently in the front row as officials squirmed on the stand. Emails, reports, meetings. One by one, the layers of denial fell apart. It turned out Nur's deportation had been scheduled, but delayed due to administrative prioritization. The inquiry concluded what the family already knew, that the system had failed, catastrophically. But even then, the report stopped short of naming who gave the final order. That part was redacted. By now, the Johals weren't just grieving, they were exhausted. Every interview, every hearing, every headline brought the pain back. At night, Danny's father sat alone at the restaurant bar. He'd pour 2 drinks. One for himself. One for the son he lost. He'd whisper, "I'm still fighting, Danny. I promise." And every morning, he'd open the restaurant again. Because Danny's dream still lived there. 6 months later, an anonymous package arrived at the lawyer's office. Inside, a short video clip. CCTV. Timestamp, May 6, 12:43 p.m. 2 hours before the killing. It showed Nur sitting on a park bench, drinking. Next to him, a man in a dark jacket. They talked for several minutes. The man handed him something small. Nur nodded, then walked toward the city center. That man was never identified. His face, partially hidden by a cap, was blurred by light. Police never released the footage. But the implication was chilling. Nur hadn't been entirely alone that day. The Johal family faced a decision. Release the footage, or hold it back. It could spark more outrage. Or it could destroy what little peace they had left. In the end, Sukhdev said no. He chose silence. Because for him, the fight wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about peace, even if peace never came. He told reporters, "The truth is heavy. Sometimes too heavy to carry. But we carried it. For Danny." A year later, Parliament passed Danny's Law, requiring immediate detention and review of asylum seekers flagged for violence. It didn't bring Danny back, but it saved others. And maybe that's what he would have wanted. At the restaurant, a plaque hangs above the bar. It reads, "In memory of Gurvinder Danny Johal, who built with love, lived with honor, and left too soon. His children visit every weekend. They light a candle. They touch the plaque. And for a moment, the world feels right again." But as the credits of justice seemed to roll, something new emerged. The journalist who broke the whistleblower story received another email. This one, unsigned. But the metadata traced to a government building. It read, "There are more files." The Johal case was not isolated. What happened in Derby was part of a pattern. You've only seen the beginning. Attached, a list of 5 names. 5 cases. All marked, closed. All involving violent crimes committed by failed asylum seekers, whose deportations were mysteriously delayed. And one of the names was still alive. I am still living in the UK. In a city not far from Derby. For the Johal family, the story ended in heartbreak. But for Britain, it may only be beginning. A system cracked wide open. A family's pain turned into a movement. And a truth too dangerous to bury forever. Because behind every policy, every file, every redacted line, is a face, a family, and a name. And sometimes, 22 seconds are all it takes to expose an entire nation's soul.